Hi everyone. I'm Renée Rosillo. I'm a trans woman, community builder, and founder. Gonna be sharing my talk today that it's called Overlooked Alpha. It's basically a series of learnings that I have had in the past, I'm gonna say 10 years. It's a summary, it's a collection of how I been experiencing entrepreneurship, supporting founders, and creating wealth. A little bit about me. I love coffee, and I believe that internet is one of the greatest world acceleration engines. I started my career working at the UN. I was managing global interactive initiatives for them, and then I became a global youth ambassador for Mexico. While I was working at the UN and just delving into world issues and more on this diplomatic angle, I started having conversations with multiple folks. And one of the things that kept popping up is that I shouldn't be there because being in the UN, even though it's a way to create change and impact, it's a little bit more slow. And I always been kind of a go-getter. Pitching ideas, trying to find solutions. So I still remember that one time someone told me, hey, you should go out and do your own startup. I didn't even know what that was at the time. But I knew that I love my iPhone and that I could create an app. So the first thing that I did was creating an app building company, a studio. After building and starting more businesses and failing a lot, I had one exit in 2019, and we were doing open banking APIs. From then, I moved from Mexico City to San Francisco. I joined the On Deck Fellowship. It was a very high quality community of early stage founders that were starting their new journeys. A lot of the pitch of On Deck at that time was come here, even if you don't have an idea, come build with people that are going to inspire you. And in the middle of all that, I started networking with the Latino community in San Francisco. This was before I came out as a trans woman. And then magic started happening. I became the co-founder of one of the largest networks for Latino founders in the world called La Familia and Founder Familia. And it was pretty funny because how it got started, it was in a barbecue where a lot of Latino leaders just meet. And then we said, hey, maybe we can do something more. And that become a community where we started getting like the venture-backed founders, Latino founders. And it showed me the power of having people come together with a shared intersectionality. At the time, it was Latinos. And then it started becoming more formal. We realized that we could make change, putting together founders and founders, and then just trying to close the wealth gap that happens with Latinos. But I had something that I needed to share to the world, and it was that I needed to come out as a trans woman. I needed to transition. And in the middle of that, I reached out to one of the founders, one of my co-founders from Founder Familia. His name is Carlos Castellanos. He's an investor at Samsung Next. I told him, hey, I am going to join the network, but I have something to tell you. And is that I'm a trans woman and my pronouns are she, her. I'm going to go now, go by Renee. And I was so scared because a lot of the process, since I realized that I had gender dysphoria and coming out, was just thinking that I was going to lose my professional network. The thing that I have created and just worked so hard for the past 10 years was going to get lost, and I was not going to have any chance to create wealth or just even work in startups. But what Carlos said to me is like, hey, that's amazing, Renee. We should go out and celebrate. And that literally changed my trajectory. I became aware that I could be myself and have the support of my community. And that just snowballed into uh, publicly coming out and then just realizing that I needed to support and champion people that look like me. After that, I started Prism, and that's where I'm currently working at. I have a co-founder. Her name is Serena Poon. She's working at SVB at early stage banking. She's a queer woman. And basically, what we are doing is we are expanding the surface area for queer folks to thrive in the startup ecosystem. And that has led to many realizations, right? Uh, and one of those is that in one of the dinners that we did early on, like this year, in San Francisco, we had a room filled with 20 queer founders. And we did the math, and in that room, more than 100 million of combined valuations were just having fun, eating, and meeting for the first time, right? And I always wonder, why are we being able to tap into uh, so much value when getting together queer founders? And then it hit me. Sometimes when you are underrepresented, sometimes when you don't look the part, you have to grind harder. And having like this common intersectionality of being queer just opens up yourself to more opportunities. But the reality is that those opportunities are very hard to see for people that are not queer or don't understand what we're going through. And from calculations about the GDP of the US and how many people are queer at the moment and the economic opportunity that this represents, I think that it's close to 5 trillion, the queer opportunity, right? And the overlooked opportunity. These are folks that are either driving wealth creation, are leading companies, and are just changing the world, the face of America and the world. I know that you must be familiar, but around 20% of folks of the Gen Z generation identify as queer. And in terms of what's going to happen in the next years, is that we are going to see these economic redistribution. It's kind of a flippening where a lot of people that are queer folks are going to be in leading positions. But still, it's very hard when you think about the venture ecosystem. Venture-backed startups are one of the fastest ways to change and create impact in any economy, in any society. Because when you think about it, there's only two ways to create impact. Either you go and you put in your time or you invest money. And we only have 24 hours a day. We have to sleep about a third of that time. So we have very, very few hours of a real opportunity where we can put in the work and change what it's happening. So as a society, we have to rely more on the capital. And um, when you match will, when you match founders that want to create something different, that are tapping into an ecosystem of needs, and then you put capital behind that, you can create a circle of opportunity. But the problem is that at this point, only 1% of all businesses in America can have access to venture capital. And that's a very small piece of it. We have so much money, so much dry powder out there. Why more businesses are not getting funded? And at this moment is a little bit disheartening. Most of the funding goes to traditional looking people, and I'm gonna say like white, cisgender men, and only 2% goes to underrepresented groups. So when you think about it, like the larger majority of people in America couldn't get access to this kind of funding. And I always think that venture capital is a once in a generation opportunity, because when you think about it, once you go out and start fundraising, you only have to convince, you have to tell a story, and you have to engage and have investors excited about you, and they are going to invest in you. Of course, there are multiple things that need to happen. They're going to be doing due diligence. You have to have a product, you have to have a team, you have to have traction. But if you compare getting funding to what happens when you try to get a mortgage, the bar to getting funding is way lower than getting a mortgage and buying a house, right? Still, it's very hard. And as I mentioned, most of that money goes to the people that have had the control of the economy, of the decisions for such a long time. But as I see it, things are changing, and they are changing very rapidly. And the only way where we can truly create a different world is if we go out and we create more opportunities for people that look like us. I made a decision very early in my life now as a trans woman, right? I'm very new to experiencing the world as a woman, but my decision was that I was gonna only fund, I was only gonna help founders that look like me, that have had a life similar to mine, because I think that for the other 98, the 8% of the traditional looking folks that are working on startups, there's always going to be someone that will try to fund them, will help them. I think that the next Mark Zuckerberg is definitely going to find investors that are going to want to back him but for the next trans woman that may be a person of color, that may be an immigrant. She or they are going to have very few options. So I want to be one of those options, and I'm working very hard to change that narrative and bring more people in to create a different mindset. The biggest problem with this is that when you think about venture ecosystem, most of those investments die. For every successful startup, there are 9 that couldn't make it. And thinking a little bit about like fund maths, how investment funds work is you're gonna put a bunch of investments. One of those or 2 of those are gonna work, and the ones that work have to return the whole fund. But it's important to remember that even if you um, invest in good quality startups, you really are going to have a slice of it, a very tiny part. So that tiny part, that 7% that you have, sometimes even less, has to be good enough for return the whole fund. So if you're a 100 million fund, that startup, that 10% of a startup that may be worth 1 billion has to give you the money back. And this is because funds work very similar to startups. They go out and fundraise from LPs. These are very wealthy individuals that wants to put their money to work, and the general partners of the fund go out and say, "Hey, I'm gonna be investing in this kind of startup at this stage. Give me money, and I'm gonna return it." So for every startup that gets invested by a fund, the manager, the partners have to be certain that that startup is going to work. And this creates a pattern where a lot of startups don't get funded, even if they reach the investment committee. Because if you think about it, once the decision is being made in the room and it has to come to supporting a founder that looks like maybe I'm gonna say the grandson of the GP, and that went to a similar school and that looks the part, versus someone that it's an outsider, they are gonna support the people that they think they are gonna make it just because of their lived experience. So we live in a world where pattern matching goes against people that are overlooked and outsiders, because as humans we've been trained to look for patterns for survival. So we typically favor the people that look more like us. The other thing is that the market determines the potential exit of the investor. So when you think about market sizing, even if you have a very good product that is getting traction, but if the market is not good enough, people are not going to invest in you. So when you think about the market, pattern matching, and sharing your story, if you don't have investors that are going to understand both pieces and will want to get behind you, it's going to be very hard to find backers. For the past 3 years, I've been working on a thesis on how can we change the system, and I've been calling it Overlooked Alpha. And it's pretty easy. There are huge markets that are traditionally overlooked by the mainstream investors. But once those markets exist and you bring in together folks that can help those founders thrive, you can strike gold and you can find very good returns. And with that money, you can create more impact because you're going to create circularity. So the thesis is simple. You find a community, you build a product around it. That product and that community help you create trust. With more trust happens serendipity. And on the other end, this thesis also works when you have underrepresented founders that typically don't have a support network. You help that network come through, finding peers, because there are peers out there. You just need to find them. And those peers become accelerators of the journeys. Most of the work that I've been doing personally to support this overlooked alpha is creating the community of peers, having fundraise support, and having a platform to share the successes that you're doing. And I already been having the opportunity to create experiments to work on these theses with amazing individuals. And I'm going to share two stories. The first one is how in Founder Familia, we were able to get to the White House. So a bunch of Latino founders start working together. We start creating value. We start creating support for us. And then one of those Latino founders goes to a party and they meet a staffer from the White House. They share the story they're doing. And then they also share how Latinos are shaping the new face of America. And we got an invitation to the White House. But the power of that invitation to the White House is that we were able to bring a group of founders that were working on amazing startups that were already thriving. But when you have the right people in the room and you have folks that want to help achieve that opportunity, magic happens, right? One of those founders was able to create a direct path with the health secretary, and another founder was able to create a path for success in terms of economic creation for Latinos, and just make their startups go fast and fastest. And the other is that continuing to do the work on just bringing people together has allowed us from the position in Founder Familia to create this dynamic of acceleration. And this photograph is from one of the latest cohorts from AWS Latino Accelerator. But what this photo story doesn't show so clearly is that from 20 of the selected startups, 11 were from Founder Familia. And we didn't even have a role in telling AWS who to select. It was an independent process. But we were just creating so much magic and momentum that the things just happen. And now I am doing something similar with Prism, and it's building the next generation queer founder network. What Serena and I are doing is we want to create a place that globally supports queer founders, because I live in San Francisco, and being queer in San Francisco, it's safe. Being queer in New York is safe. But when you think about queer founders in Sao Paulo, in Brazil, where we just did an event a couple months ago, and when you think about queer founders in Mexico, where I'm originally from, people sometimes are not safe to come out. So we decided to change that and to create a place where every queer founder can come together and just help each other go fast and remove all friction. And one of the most amazing things about Prism is that we are a community led by women. And this has been such a different way to frame queerness, at least in the startup ecosystem, where typically you see a lot of gay white men leading. That I have amazing gay friends, and I think that all queer identities and all LGBTQ identities are valid. But for the first time ever, network led by women is being able to put the right founders in the right rooms and just helping them accelerate their careers. As I begin to close this conversation, I would like to leave with something. We have the power to make a difference in the world. We have the power to create the world that we see, because everything that has ever been built by humans started by someone that looked like you, that looked like me, someone that dared to create change. And it will come and you will have many chances to create change. And if you have the money, you can support founders that look like you. If you don't have money, then you can use your social networks to amplify the and use your networks as a platform to support founders that need your help, that could be looking like you, that could be queer, that could be immigrants, that could be the underrepresented. And if you can, you can go out and buy their products. But the only way to make a true difference in this world is to pair economic opportunity with the mission to help people that are overlooked and help them thrive.